So now let's move on to the panel of environment and energy. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, John, for setting up the background. How important the sustainability and fighting the climate change is. My name is Yi Cui. I'm a professor of material science and engineering. I'm also serving as the director of Precourt Institute for Energy at Stanford right here. The climate change issue and sustainability, it is a very important one, particularly having US and China collaboration will be very important. So today's panel, we have 3 people, including Professor Fuqiang Yang and Gretchen Daily and myself. To really set up the background, I would like to share with everybody a presentation from the Stanford angle. How do we think about fighting climate change from the energy perspective? Let me share the screen. So fighting the climate change, and you have been seeing the Paris Agreement. Actually, as we are speaking right now, it's the last day of United Nations, the climate conference, COP26, happening in Glasgow. And it's very, very important issue. At Stanford University right here, we have been working on clean energy for more than about two decades or so, and in a very aggressive way. So let me share with you from the Stanford Precourt Institute, the whole Stanford energy community, and what's our thinking to decarbonize the world economy over the next 3 decades. Well, looking at the CO2 emission by the countries, you look at here, well, China is 28%, US is 15%. These are the 2 biggest greenhouse gas emitters right there, followed by India and Russia and the rest of the country. So it's particularly important for US and China to work together to fight against the climate change. Looking at under the big background, what's happening is the net zero commitment. The Paris Agreement 2050, many countries agree upon, including United States and many European countries. China committed to get to net zero by 2060. Russia is 2060, the big emitter. Even Saudi Arabia committed to 2060 now. And India just announced during the COP26 meeting 2070. So this is happening in the global scale from different countries. Fortune 500 companies, there are roughly 60% of the companies now committed to climate goals. These will go up quickly. And Amazon's climate pledge by 2040, even earlier, more than 200 companies committed to that. Our President Mark just mentioned our announcement at Stanford, launching the new school focused on climate and sustainability. This really prepared the whole Stanford community, unprecedented, effort to fight against the single biggest challenge ever faced by the human being in the history. So from the energy side, how do we respond to these great opportunities to really develop further? And as a Precourt Institute, we develop a vision of sustainable, affordable, and secure energy for all over the decade-long development, led by previous 3 directors of Precourt Institute. Stanford is very well prepared to tackle the challenge facing us in the next 3 decades. If you look at Stanford right now, the faculty working on energy and the students, we really have the scale right there. We have 200 plus faculty, 1,000 plus students, ranging from science, engineering to finance, economics, and policies, really across all the areas. We really have the talents to work on a variety of problems. And to really forming the strategy, how do we decarbonize the whole economy? we need to look into where the greenhouse gas emission come from. Electricity sector, very big. Transportation sector, very big. The industry, the steel, the cement, the plastic making, also very big. And from the commercial and residential building, energy consumption, heating and cooling the building, that's a lot of energy, 13%, and agriculture as well. So based on this emission, we got to formulate our strategy to decarbonize. At Stanford Energy, over decade-long of research, we actually coming up with a strategy. These vertical columns are those areas involving science, engineering, and technology. And horizontal expertise are those areas involving, for example, finance and policy, economics. Let me share with you at Stanford right here. To look into the electrical grid, we have the bit and watt initiative using a data, right? That's bit, to combine with electricity, that's watt, to think about how do we decarbonize the electrical grid. And we have this initiative launched about 5 years ago. We have Storage as initiative to store energy, to develop the battery technology to power electrical vehicles, to develop a long duration energy storage for integrating solar and wind into the electrical grid. That's our Storage X initiative. We also have a natural gas initiative, utilize the natural gas without emitting CO2. We have 2 fundamental science centers, that's a catalysis funded by Department of Energy, that's SunCat, of Science, the Material Center, also funded by Department of Energy. We are also in the process of launching the new initiative, carbon removal, taking CO2 from the point source as well as from the air, direct air capture, as well as thinking about methane emission. Indeed, during the COP26, these both picked up by the China side, Xie Zhenhua, the climate envoy, and also from the US side as well, from John Kerry, the methane monitoring, pay serious attention to the methane's CO2, the greenhouse gas warming effect. We also want to launch a green hydrogen initiative to help decarbonize the economy and sustainable manufacturing. Cross-cutting, very important, is economics and finance that really fit in very well the theme of today's forum, and the policy, education, external communication, using data and artificial intelligence for plan the future energy system. And we are also having great opportunity. Mark, our president, just mentioned our sustainability accelerator for technology translation. That will be very big part of Stanford Energy ecosystem as well, to couple together with this accelerator. Social and human behavior, global engagement with China, with India, with countries around the globe. So Precourt Institute has been playing a function to cross-cutting the university. Now it's a new school coming in. This will be a funding pillar for the institute to help the new school to build out the program in the energy space. And with the new school, this is a blueprint our President Mark announced earlier this year, how the new school will construct a new department having the institute's involvement to really enable sustainability and fight climate change. So I won't go into detail of that. And last, let me share with you from my own research. I've been joining Stanford faculty. I've been in faculty for about 16 years now, working on nanotechnology for sustainability from lab to market. For example, we work on high energy density batteries about 13 years ago, spinning out my first company, Amprius. And we also work on the particle filtration in the air to clean up the air and produce this air filter to make KN95 and 95 facial masks, to have the HVAC filtration as well. We spin out a company, 4CL. We also set up the technology accelerator to accelerate the technology and spin out more companies on larger scale energy storage in the venue. Last year, Life Lab, that's a new type of thermal textile for cooling and warming the human body, for saving the building energy consumption. water filtration, soil cleanup, and green building materials. So this is an experiment I've been trying is how do we do the technology innovation in the university lab and set up a mechanism to translate into the industry. With the new school coming in, setting up the sustainability accelerator, we're going to see more and more from our Stanford University to really do a fast technology as well as the policy solution translation into the real world. So with that, now let me introduce our panelists today. First is Professor Fuqiang Yang. He's a senior advisor of a climate change and energy transition program in the Institute of Energy in Peking University. Fuqiang has really a superstar history of experience on thinking about energy, on climate. He spent a number of years in US. He's now in China. He's very familiar with both sides. He could probably make a really good panel. We're going to have more questions to ask to give everybody the insight. Gretchen Daily is a Bing Professor in Environmental Science, the Director of Stanford Natural Capital Project. Gretchen is one of the best persons to really introduce to you how do we protect environment, what do we need to do to have human living together in a very happy way with the environment. With this introduction, now let me invite Fuqiang to the stage to give us the first presentation.
Thanks, Yi. Hi there, I'm glad to see you, all the people here, and I would like to introduce what is energy issues in China. Yeah, I would like to talk about the how can we control fossil fuel consumption in China. So you understand China consumes a lot of fossil fuel. Is 85% is from fossil fuel. So recently, you all understand is the Chinese government established the timeline and for carbon emissions and from 2020 to 2060. And so you can see that is a very detailed. This is the first time Chinese government and give a different, policies and in a different time stages. And for our academic area, we think that is a baseline. And so we can establish our aggressive, the plan and to reduce the CO2 emissions. And so that can make sure and to achieve the government, the goals. Otherwise, so let's have some difficult to do it. And so we all understanding is the Chinese government goal usually is a little bit conservative. And so there are still room for the enterprises and for the local government and for the academic circles and to do the more effort. And we understand why we like to control the fossil fuels and what is the future. And first, like to see what different kind of different type of the fossil fuel can reach the consumption peak. And here you can see for the coal consumption, and we like to see the 2013 to 2023, and we can reach the coal peak. And for the oil, we think is 2023 to 2028, and for the carbon, that is 2025 to 2030. And for the natural gas, that is the latest fossil fuels, and will reach the peak between the 2030 to 2035. But our study, and we like to see the coal peak and the oil and natural gas and the carbon emission peak will much earlier. And so particularly we like to see the carbon peak around the 2025, 5 earlier than the Chinese government goal. And we, based on the line, if we go up to the 2060, and we like to see, this is our approach. is emission is get peak by 2025 and 2030, and we like to see the total fossil fuel consumption and reach the peak, and also 2035, and that is a total energy consumption reach the peak, and so by the 2060, that is carbon neutral, and so we have a different meaning because for the Chinese government, carbon neutral means now they have not clearly identified that is for CO2 or is for GHG. And for our approach, we think 2060 carbon neutral is for GHG total emissions. And we understand what is a non-fossil fuel in the future will like. And so far is by 2025 is 20%, and gradually up to 2050 is at least 85% from the non-fossil fuel energy. If we're talking about the zero carbon emissions, and so in this case, we like to see the non-fossil fuel will account almost near 100%. And we like to see the coal production and consumption in China. We all know China production and consumption is account more than 50% in the total production and consumption in the world. And so how can we phase out coal is number one priorities. And we can see the first is China reached the coal consumption peak by 2016, and then after 2017, the coal consumption rebound. And before we hopefully 2016 is a peak, but unfortunately because the 2021 this year and the coal consumption will be much higher than the 2016 coal consumption. But we have not to make sure how about the 2022 if coal consumption is maintained higher, and so we can see the coal consumption probably will peak about 2021. And so so that is a means if we try to phase out the coal, that's not easy, and the coal consumption maybe will rebound very seriously, and so we have to pay attention. And we have to all use the mean and the methods and resources to do so. So first, let's talking about the coal phase out in China. First, we have to focus what area we have to focus, and that definitely is a sector. And from these slides, you can see the power is account almost 50%, and manufacture but is steel, iron, cement, and coal chemical, building material, and others. And for building is about 10%. So we have identified all these sectors and focus with which sector we have different technology and policy to deal with. And based on our study, what is the coal consumption will reach the peak for different sectors. And for the power sector, we think that is around 2025. For transportation, much earlier, probably will be 2023. And for construction and the building material, and we think is about 2028. And for others, we think is others sectors is before the 2025. And everybody is very interested or worried about the China power sector because the China too many coal-fired power plant and here, and they worry is about the future, about the 2025. What is the power sector look like? And we think is 2025 we have a triple peaks and coal power capacity and reach the 1.2 billion. kilowatt, and coal consumption and with 1.45 billion TCE, and for the CO2 emission is less than 4.7 billion ton. And so we can see the power sector, we like to see stop the build a new power plant, and in China is by 2023 or 2024. And second area we like to focus is local, and we understand in some local, particularly in the northern China, in the Mongolia, Shanxi, and Xinjiang. All this is a major coal production area and consumption provinces. And compared to the country in the world, how many countries is rank in the top 10 for the coal production, and in here is China, including the local, is account 7. 7 from 10 is located in China. And for the coal consumption, if we count top 8 country or local, and China is account 6. And so you can see the China consumption, we have to focus our attention and to the local. And we're talking about the oil, and oil, we like to see the oil consumption peak by 2025. And so far is we are looking at transportation. That is account more than 55% of oil consumption. Unfortunately, China is developed a EU fleet very rapidly, and we think is for the transportation sector, we can see the oil peak will be around 2023, and so that is give a very strong the support for the oil total consumption reach the peak. And for the natural gas, now we compare to the US natural gas consumption. And natural gas consumption in China is much less. And by the 2020, we only account 320 BCM, but for US is around 900 BCM. And so they still have a lot of room to develop natural gas. So first, what is the role for natural gas is replace the coal. And so far, natural renewables not big enough to replace the coal. And natural gas is definitely is an alternative fuels to replace the coal. And so in the future, we like to also put cap on natural gas. And now we have a program put cap on coal, oil, and next time, probably we'll start this year, we like to put cap on natural gas. So first is make adjustment for the consumption and structure. And so in the urban use industry, and we like to see reduce the growth rate. And we like to push forward and have more natural gas for the power generation, because natural gas is a flexible electricity sources. But in China, we don't use natural gas too much. So that's mean that that also is have a stop use more renewables. And so challenge ahead, and yeah, you can see the coal consumption on is very slow, or other fossil fuel is very slow recent years. But for 2021, you can see the coal is a rebound and increase almost is a 200 million. And for the oil is almost same, and natural gas increase, and of course renewable is increased significantly. But generally speaking, the fossil fuel increase very rapidly, and so that is energy consumption increased 5.7%, the CO2 emission increased 4%. And that is 10 years, the first time the CO2 increase this higher. And so that we are worried about that. We have to find a way and to push the coal consumption and fossil fuel consumption down. So that is my presentation. And if you have any question, happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Fuqiang. I think our next speaker, Gretchen, is in the process of logging it in smoothly. Hi, Gretchen, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Do you want to present now? Or do you want me to give you a few minutes to settle down in the airport? I understand.
Oh, I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you.
Now let's have Professor Gretchen Daily to tell us about the environment-related topic. Gretchen, do you want to share the screen?
Yes. I'm at San Francisco Airport, about to head on a trip to Europe, where many people are very interested in learning about China's pioneering advances. And I will describe some of those. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Then, yeah, I'll just say that in complementing Dr. Yang and Dr. Cui, I'm working in the area of harmonizing people and nature. And China, I'll take my glasses off. China has gone farther than any other country in many dimensions of achieving this vision of an ecological civilization. And it's exciting because not only is China a crucial part of the global system, but also because the innovations in China developed in collaboration with Stanford and with many other partners around the world. These innovations are now being considered and starting to be adopted in other countries. So I'll give you a quick overview. First, many of the innovations center around these kinds of questions when we think about humanity's intimate dependence on nature and how rapidly nature is in decline. The questions are first, well, how much and where should we protect? Second, how can we secure people and nature? Secure, in economic terms, in terms of climate, in terms of health, in terms of water, all the dimensions of security that people are seeking. How do we achieve those as well as securing nature and our life support systems? And third, given how GDP is blind to the values of nature, to society, to these dimensions of security, how do we move beyond GDP and track progress in a meaningful way? So I'll give you a very quick taste of what we're doing, working closely together through a partnership focused on engaged science, answering these questions in places all over the world, but like this landscape, where and how much to protect. How can we, and then deploying the greatest advances in technology and driving further innovations for sensing conditions all over the planet that are crucial to our security. And third, making all of this accessible and actionable to decision makers through a data and software platform hosted at Stanford by this partnership, and now driving investments in land and ocean stewardship to achieve these outcomes in well-being for both people and nature. And the software we've created is making all of the science in these different areas shown here, and in many other dimensions of human well-being, making that science accessible and actionable. So the INVEST software allows decision makers to play out different scenarios of development, investment across sectors, across industries, and across regions, and come up with an integrated and harmonized approach. This software has now been adopted to some degree by virtually all countries, and China has been mainstreaming its use deeply in policy, planning, finance, and everyday practice. We recently, a few months ago, released the beginning of Urban Invest with the new data streams coming at the meter scale of resolution. And we have used this in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou so far, and many other cities in China and also globally are starting to use it, like 775 European cities recently used this new science and software to look at climate security and nature-based solutions in European cities. So in looking at this transformation that we are all trying to achieve, there are three innovations that really stand out of many others in China that other countries now would like to adopt. The first is just ecosystem assessment, showing you very quickly China took a more comprehensive and advanced approach than any other country in sensing what is happening in terms of ecosystem quality, extent, and change across the country using satellite-based imagery, other types of remote sensing. And then over here on the right, more than 141 ground truthing sites where a human being goes and checks what's actually happening against the images that are being processed from different platforms. And then using INVEST, trying to understand across the country, and this just is the tip of the iceberg, what is the provision of benefits of services from nature to people, and what would the return on investment be in improving the quality or the extent of these different ecosystem types in different places. And China has shown that since over the decade 2000 to 2010, there was great improvement in most services. There's still a decline in biodiversity, which is a key component of nature. But in all the other services, investments in, wetlands or forest for flood mitigation, for example, or in these arid regions for sandstorm prevention, these investments have really paid off. And that has led to a second major innovation in policy and finance in zoning land. Here, starting out with about 25% of land zoned 10 years ago for these high-level services defined by the central government, but implemented by local governments. And then we did many demonstrations together in Miyun watershed, serving Beijing, providing more than half of the water to that northeast part of China, working on the South to North Water Transfer Project, also serving North China, and showing where to protect to achieve benefits. A lot of detail in this. And third, in a contrasting example, working in agricultural systems, developing for Hainan Island, an area with a lot of rubber production, also many values to nature in the globally significant biodiversity there, and an area that many people visit for the beauty and the personal benefits of experiencing tropical nature. So in all of these demonstrations, in the Tibetan areas on the left, in Shanxi province, in the middle of the country, here in Hainan Island, In all cases, we're doing thousands of interviews with people to understand the social and economic implications of taking this zoning and more of a sustainable approach to livelihood security and refining policies that today have led to zoning over half now of land area. And many other countries are now starting to adopt this approach to achieve this, and relatedly, the economic and health and energy and climate, water and other dimensions of security. So third, I'm going to jump ahead and mention gross ecosystem product, something where China was waiting for many years to improve GDP, gross domestic product, but politically it's been intractable to change GDP. So then some leaders in China, including Professor Yang, with whom we worked very closely, proposed an alternative gross ecosystem product to be reported alongside GDP. And it's like this, with GDP on the left, you can see it's all the goods and services produced through an economy multiplied by their price. That's a simple way of thinking about GDP. And GEP is constructed in parallel. All the goods and services from ecosystems multiplied by the measure of their value. And this is evolving, just like it took some decades to develop gross domestic product. GEP is in development with a lot of science being advanced at Stanford and through our global partnership, together with the Chinese Academy of Sciences and many other institutions, about 400 institutions globally. But GEP, we have now demonstrated it, taking in remote sensing data, the field data I was telling you about, on ecosystem extent and condition, determining the flow of benefits to people using the software Invest, and then revealing, number one, the contribution of ecosystems to the economy and society. Number two, guiding financial compensation among regions from downstream beneficiaries of flood protection or beneficiaries of irrigation water and hydropower or cleaner air, other kinds of benefits, cooler temperatures in cities or protection along coastlines. And then third, tracking the performance of policies, leaders, and investments, all aiming to achieve this win-win outcome of better life support systems and better human well-being. And this is now being scaled across China. And the amazing thing, I should say, we've worked, this is me here, I'll probably look quite different than right now, and our team working together with the highest levels of officials in China. They all came for a visit to Stanford a few years ago. And we continue to work very intimately in advancing these approaches at policy and technical levels. And this, the incredible news was a few months ago, the UN Statistical Commission approved GEP for global use. And now many countries want to adopt GEP. And this is much more than just a metric. It's a whole new language about the values of nature and human dependence and impacts on nature, and this very systematic framework and approach for transforming financial systems, our whole sort of economic system. This is being scaled through multilateral development banks, all of which signed a statement last week at the Climate COP saying they commit to mainstreaming these approaches to valuing nature in all of their operations. And these public-facing banks invest about $220 billion per year in development worldwide. And this marks a tremendous shift in the definition of human development and in integrating values of nature previously hidden into development strategy for win-win outcomes. And I like looking into, I'll close here, this image because we really don't know what an ecological civilization will look like in this dream, but we can see key elements of it that stand out here and here. And in partnership, we can find our way through all the foggy areas. And I'm heading now to work with academies in Europe at the Royal Swedish Academy of Science and the UK Royal Academy, Royal Society, to help advance these approaches and drive improvements in the science, technology, and in the adoption with policymakers and normal people all across the world. So thank you for listening, and I really appreciate this chance to connect across our countries and figure out a role for everyone in driving this urgently needed change. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. This is an amazing presentation. Congratulations on the achievement of this project. Now, let me also invite Fuqiang to come back. Let's have a little bit of discussion. Gretchen, maybe I should start from you. So I really like the idea you show the GDP and GEP all together. I now appreciate a lot more of our organizers for Stanford China Economic Forum, right? This is energy and environment. You know, Fuqiang is representing the GDP part. You are representing the GEP part. So how nice that could be. So the first question for you, Gretchen, is well, to be able to achieve this ecological harmony with human beings, there's a technology needed. There's also finance tool needed, as well as policy. Do you have all the tools available to you? If not, what's missing in technology? What's missing in finance? And what's missing in policy?
Fantastic question to open up. So we have enough to get started, and that's the key thing. All countries could make great progress with the tools and innovations that we have in hand, but we need rapidly to go beyond. In technology, we need ever finer sensing of ecosystem condition, water quality, air quality, temperature change, and then a lot of details, many, many different environmental data layers, like the security of coastal communities. And most of humanity, you know, a huge fraction lives along coastlines in areas vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise. We need much more information about just the bathymetry, the depth of water as you move away from coastline, things like that. So we need more of a data commons, and we are building that at Stanford through this natural capital data and software platform. Second, we need the software to connect to decision-making much more seamlessly. And in the context of the development banks, we're now getting pretty close, and they really like what we have, and they have incorporated our software into their systems. But we have not yet gotten to the private financial sector, and I'll turn over to Dr. Yang now, because the private financial sector is absolutely central. That's like the heartbeat of the global economic system, and we need to connect more. And in Europe, I'm meeting with CEOs of several private sector banks and investment groups. And that's where a lot of innovation is needed next.
Yeah, maybe Fuqiang, this same question holds for you, right? You present this energy transition in China, the oil, the coal. Going through this transition, the technology, the finance, the policy, you know, what's missing right there? If you talk about technology, what are your top 3 to 5 technology you will see you like to have it happen to do this transition? And then you can talk about finance policy if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, I have like to name a couple key technology and China needs. And first is in the transportation. We understand is Tesla have built a manufacture plant here, and China now is still take over the conventional engine, and you have to say our battery can help the car to run longer. And fortunately, and I just heard recently a news, and now they have a couple, research. They say they have developed a battery can run for more than 2,000 kilometers. So I think that is a good. And based on the U.S., I think the U.S. is put a lot of resources on the EV and battery, and I think we can work here. And second, I think is a Chinese great company definitely need software and technology, and that is can take more renewables. And in US, we can see the California and other area state level, and they have take more renewables, account 30 and even 40, 50% of electricity from renewables. And that is also maintain the grid is a safety and reliability, and also is a clean and low carbon. So we need all this technology. And third one, I think because US have developed the flexibility and power, particularly use natural gas for power generation, and also methane leakage recovery. And in China, you understand is particularly for the natural gas power engine, China still needs a technology. They cannot produce the high level of the natural gas engine. And also, China developed the natural gas and conventional or non-conventional. Definitely is a methane leakage is a problem from drilling, and from storage, from transportation, and from use. And so in this case, I understand US have many technology already there. And so I think for these two countries, we have a good, in technology cooperation, also for the policy. And when I went back to the Beijing in 1999, and I work with Energy Foundation, and we introduced a lot of international best practice, including in US, in the building, in the industry, in the transportation, like cafe. We also introduced to China. In that time, you can see that China is hungry and to learn from international practice. So in this, so that is why the China is speed up to catch up, the advanced countries in the world. And so that's without, all the scientists and the policy maker and make contribution in the policy area. And so now, fortunately, and we just heard that Chinese and China and US have a joint announcement, and for the cooperation on climate change issues, and that's have at least many technology and policy on other approach. I think that is good, and so I think is we are happy to see the U.S. and China cooperation come back, and we put our finger crossed we will get better for the next decade.
So this is great. We have limited time. We have a lot of people, I think, in the audience, a large number. There's some questions flowing in. I'm going to synthesize the question together with my own understanding. As one question to you, can you spend just only 1 minute to answer it? So between US and China, where do you see we should collaborate, still missing, that can have huge impact? 1 minute each. I don't know who wants to take this question first.
Yeah, I would like to take a question first. My simple answer is trust. And before, a couple of decades, and U.S. and China, and trust is between the community and enterprises and policy maker. And so, how can we bring the trust? And we like to hear on Monday, the President Xi Jinping and President Jordan will they will talk about. Let's listen to their, this is a new break.
Question.
I was going to say the same thing. I feel that anything is possible with trust. And in the absence of trust, almost nothing is possible. So we have a special role as members of academic communities to cultivate that trust and to play kind of a neutral, take a politically neutral approach and help establish arenas where on both sides we can get together and drive these advances. And part of the reason I'm meeting with the different academies worldwide is because we're thinking that might be a really good arena in which to drive this engagement that is needed to lead the world in this transformation of financial systems. So I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate your saying that, Professor Yang.
Okay. Well, with that, certainly I'd like to thank both of you. Today's panel, I hope the audience, you are now certainly convinced. I don't have to do too much to convince you. Energy, environment, and sustainability issue is probably one of the most important issues. And the next 30 years to come, we need to work together. That's the reason Stanford is starting a new school on climate and sustainability. I'd like to welcome more broadly the Stanford community to participate on this. Certainly, there's a lot of issues to work on. This naturally lead to the next panel, very important tool to solve problems. With that, I would like to conclude this panel. Let's pass on to the next one. Thank you very much.